So something came in the mail, a very specific something. Yes, I ordered Ken Penders' new book, The Lara Sue Chronicles Beginnings. He sent along an extra comic too, issue 62 of the main Archie series, and signed it. Thanks, Ken! On the incredibly small chance you don't know who Ken Penders is, I'm going to give the briefest of summaries. Ken Penders is a comic book writer who has made, for better or for worse, significant contributions to the comic book history of Sonic the Hedgehog. He began with the series on issue 11 of Archie Sonic in 1994, and continued as a writer on staff until issue 159 in 2006. Though his proper final contribution to the book would be inking and lettering a story in issue 169, also in 2006. That's a 12-year run on the series, which is pretty impressive. Then, through legal magic that has been explained to me multiple times, though I always feel like I'm missing something, Ken obtained the ownership of the characters and concepts he created for the comic, including characters like Scourge, Sonic's parents, and Too Many Echidna! And then for the past several years, he has been working on the Lara Sue Chronicles, a story that is meant to act as a continuation to a set of stories he did called Mobius 25 years later. Let's summarize that really fast. Mobius 25 years later is, as it sounds, a story set 25 years later. The main cast has all aged and settled down as much as they're willing to, and had children who are now all entering adventuring age. To quote the foreword Ken wrote for this book, Mobius 25 years later was never intended to be a Sonic story, but neither was Knuckles ever intended to be the main character either. That distinction belongs to Lara Sue, the daughter of Knuckles and Julie Sue. I simply hadn't reached the point of the narrative where Lara Sue's arc really began before the story was abruptly cut off during its initial run due to editorial forces beyond my control. My brain immediately compared this against the MC2, which basically features Spider-Girl as its main character. Like, there's plenty of other characters, but you know who got the most attention. Then mix that with the plot point of Mobius potentially blowing up from Ken's Sonic movie pitch, and boom, you got Mobius 25 years later. This new book is about 80% reprints of Mobius 25 years later stories, with 2 brand new stories setting up the future installments. Without further ado, let's jump into this book. I didn't see that. Hell of a first page. I don't know who this is yet. Next page. Ken, stop! Okay, he included an autographed postcard and autographed the title page as well. We're gonna split this video kind of into 2 portions. I don't feel the need to review the entirety of a storyline that's been around since 2003-2004 in this video. If people are interested, I'll do a standalone video on 25 years later at some point in the future. We're first going to go over the technical aspects of how the old material is presented in the book, and then we'll go more in depth with the new material. The first portion of the book collects Mobius 25 years later stories from issue 131 through issue 144. Up front, I do have something positive to say. The print quality of this book is great. I have to look at Archie Sonic panels a lot, and this is probably the best these stories have ever looked in print. Even comparing this against the super high quality digital versions I have of these stories, it's an impressive print job. And despite being an independently released graphic novel, its page quality is on par with collected Archie and IDW Sonic material. With it being a hardcover release also, I am surprised at the price point only being $36. Just to clarify, I am not talking about the art itself, just the condition it's printed in. That being said, the page size chosen for this book doesn't always fit the dimensions of the original art, so some pages you get these jarring borders on the side. It's not the worst thing, but it's definitely one of those things where once you see it, you can't unsee it. I'm not sure if this was a limitation of the printer, or accommodations made for the new stories, because they all fit perfectly on their pages. But if you are looking for a book that just preserves these stories as printed in their highest quality, this does a pretty good job. That is, until they start covering issue 144. Here's where Ken starts making changes to the original art. I saw this panel and said, I don't think that's how it originally looked, and it didn't. Changing what Angel Island looks like is kind of bizarre. I don't really see what was wrong with the original art, cause this looks worse. Then on the next page we have another slight redraw. The shape of the ship has changed and the text has been updated. As in the new stories, Knuckles is only referred to as Nox. Lara Sue's vanishing is changed, with lightning added for some reason. But the worst they do is to Sonic. I always liked this goofy panel of Sonic accidentally being erased from time. It's equal parts horrifying and comedic. Why was it changed to this? It just looks worse. I understand why the last two panels were changed, as it originally tied back to the main continuity as opposed to setting up a continuing story. But this one change is baffling. All that being said, I did enjoy revisiting 25 years later. It was kinda nostalgic for me, and despite what I had heard, it made me look forward to the new material. Which made me even more disappointed in it. The Storm is the first new story presented in this book, and it made me feel lost. The story begins with us being introduced to the 25 years later counterpart of everyone's least favorite Penders creation, Jeffrey St. John. Honestly, on this first page, the art isn't great, but it's fine. And I do think this new dog girl character, Ensign Brownie, has a pretty cute design. Then I turned to the next page and felt like I was going insane, as in a burst of light, everyone got uglier. The art's bad. I don't like just saying that matter-of-factly, but the state of things are dire. It also didn't help I had trouble following this story at first. After rereading it several times, it's going with a similar setup that Ian Flynn's entries into the 25 years later continuity had. That Sonic being erased has disrupted the space-time continuum, making noticeable changes. Only this time with potentially world-ending results. This story feels like nothing substantial. It's very quickly attempting to introduce us to all the characters and the stakes of the story, and Laura Sue is on a total of 1 page, despite the fact that this is meant to be her book. Ken seems to actually understand that's a key problem with The Storm, because in the foreword to the second story, the Laura Sue Chronicles Shattered Tomorrows, Ken states that he wanted to shift the focus so that Laura Sue is the main character from the beginning. I do think the art in this story is marginally better. There's still some prevalent issues and it still is very inconsistent, but it's not as hard to look at as the previous story. Though on occasion it reuses art from the previous story, it's weird. From the beginning, the story sets up that Knuckles, is dead. I don't hate that as a starting point. There's a moment in 25 years later where it pretty clearly sets up that there's a decent chance that neither Sonic nor Knuckles survives this adventure. We see the altered version of events where now instead of 4 of them attempting to save Mobius, there's only 3 now that Sonic has been erased. And Knuckles doesn't make it back to the ship this time. Sidebar, I think this Rhino character that keeps popping up is meant to be the equivalent of Rotor. That's primarily a hunch based on his relationship to the Echidna Kobar. What kind of overcomplicates the story is that there are 2 different framing devices. We have Laura Sue looking back at the events, but then we have a human astronaut named Commander Michael Taylor watching a video log from Laura Sue 6 chronons into the future. I looked up what a chronon is, and I still don't get it. I thought I understood it, and then I read more, and then I feel like I understood less. I feel like I should understand the length of time between the core events of the story and the story's current events. Laura Sue also fantasy curses. Ken, you show titty in this book. You can say fuck. Beyond that, this is just a second setup story. There's a 2-page spread chronicling all the things that'll happen eventually. Overall, this whole book is a fairly good collection of out-of-print old Archie Sonic stories, with 2 new stories that feel like a whole lot of nothing. Like all these stories do is deliver me 2 different hooks for ostensibly the same story. I would love to get dramatic about a story being bad, but I kind of felt nothing. Except maybe a little let down by how nothing I felt. If he puts out another book, I will probably buy it, because I am interested in what he'll do. I just hope that it's something. Wait a minute, I still don't know who this is! Late addition to this video, it looks like Ken is working on getting the rest of Archie reprinted. Funnily enough, while I was reading the first part of this book, I was thinking that it's a shame that the rest of the Archie series isn't getting reprinted this way. He hasn't revealed too much about what he's planning besides a Knuckles omnibus and a collection featuring the works of Scott Shaw, but it sounds like he's reached out to a few other creators about it too. I am cautiously optimistic because as much as I would love to see Archie Sonic go into print again, the Laura Sue Chronicles took a long time to come out. So who knows if and when this will happen. And who knows, maybe we can get Fleetway back into print next. Thank you so much for watching. I think this is the quickest I've ever made a video like this. Usually I sit on my thoughts for a couple of months before talking about something I'm reviewing, but both because a lot of people are talking about this right now, and I feel like there isn't a whole lot to talk about just yet in terms of the new content in this book, it was appropriate for me to make this video faster than I normally would. I always appreciate the feedback, and if you enjoyed the video, you can like, comment, or subscribe. And if you want to support me, you can do so over at patreon.com/hsquid. And I want to give a shout out to my current patron, Ned Rex. Next long form video will probably end up being a lore compilation, but I do have a couple other more unique long form videos in the works. But I will see y'all in the next video.